The morning I nearly died, no one from my pack was there to see it. That is the part I have turned over in my mind 1,000 times since. Not the ambush, not the poisoned bolt, not the black water of the Veldrath Gorge closing over my head. The part that undoes me, every time, is that she was there instead. A woman who had no reason to be on that riverbank before sunrise. A woman the valley had spent years telling she did not matter. She pulled me out of the river, and she did not know what I was, and she saved my life anyway. I am Calder, Alpha King of Veldrath Keep. I have held this kingdom through 3 succession wars, 2 blighted winters, and a council that has not agreed on anything since my grandfather's reign. I do not ask for help. I do not permit weakness. I have crossed the high pass alone 100 times, because I have always believed that a king who needs no escort needs no vulnerability. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a great many things. She taught me all of them in 3 days. It started the way disasters always do, quietly, and then all at once. I had crossed the ridge alone because the intelligence was too sensitive for a full escort. A rival lord 3 valleys east had been moving men through the high passes, and I wanted to see the terrain myself before I committed troops to a blocking position. I'd done it before. I told myself it was prudent. What it was arrogant. The bolt took me in the left flank as I cleared the granite shoulder above the gorge. A crossbow, hidden in the pine brake 40 yards upslope. Not a clean kill shot. Whoever had paid for it was using hunters, not soldiers, and they'd misjudged the angle. The bolt punched through muscle and stopped against the rib, and I felt the poison in it within 30 seconds, a slow, creeping cold that had nothing to do with the mountain air. I had 2 choices: call my wolf and try to outrun it, or go down and face a second bolt. I called my wolf. The shift is always fastest under duress, and this one nearly took me off the ledge. I came down on 4 legs and drove hard for the gorge. The river below was the fastest way off the ridge, and I knew it, even half blind with pain. The wolf's instincts were better than mine in that moment. He took us off the drop into the water before I could question it. The Veldrath River in late autumn is not a thing you enter willingly. The snowmelt from the upper peaks comes down fast and black and cold enough to stop a man's heart in minutes. I am not a man when I shift, and my wolf has survived worse. But the poison was already threading through the bloodstream, and the cold hit me like a wall, and somewhere in the middle of the gorge I stopped knowing which direction was up. I remember the shallows, gravel under my side, the sound of the current pulling at my legs. And then a voice. "Easy, easy now, I'm not going to hurt you." Not alarmed, not loud, the way you'd speak to a frightened animal, calm, low, completely steady. And then hands on my flank, pressing against the wound, not frantically, not with hesitation, just pressure, sure and immediate, the way someone applies it who has done this before. My wolf, who trusts no one, went still under those hands. I was too far gone to understand what that meant. I only understood it later. I surfaced in pieces. Warmth first, a banked fire, the smell of pine resin and something medicinal, a weight of wool blankets. Then pain, dull and deep, centered in my left side. Then the ceiling, raw timber low, soot darkened at the center where the chimney pipe ran through. A healer's cottage, small, everything in it had a use. She was at the work table with her back to me, grinding something in a clay mortar. She hadn't heard me wake. I lay still and watched her for a moment, I don't know why. Perhaps because movement would announce me, and I was not yet ready to announce myself. Perhaps because my wolf, still sluggish under the poison's retreating edge, was doing something I had never felt him do before. He was paying attention. Not the alert attention of a threat assessment. Something else, something quieter, as if he were memorizing the sound of the grinding and the set of her shoulders and the way she pushed her hair back from her face with the back of her wrist without looking up from her work. She was not young in the reckless way, and she was not old in the faded way. She was somewhere in the middle of both, in the particular way of a woman who has been doing hard, real work her whole life and has the steadiness to show for it. Her dress was plain, dark wool, worn at the elbows. Her hands, when she turned to add something to the clay bowl, were capable hands, not soft. "You're awake," she said, without turning around. I said nothing. "That's all right." She turned then and she looked at me with the direct, assessing look of someone who has spent years reading patience, not afraid, not deferential. "You've been under for about 6 hours. The bolt is out. The poison is slower. I've been drawing it since yesterday morning and I'll keep drawing it. You'll need to stay still." Yesterday morning. "How long?" I said. My voice came out rougher than I intended. "You shifted back sometime in the night. I covered you." No embarrassment in it, no coyness, simply a fact, delivered with the same practical calm as the rest. "I've seen a shift before. My father was pack-blooded. I know the rules." She set a cup on the low stool beside the pallet and stepped back to her work table. I looked at the cup, some dark infusion, steam rising. I looked back at her. "Who are you?" I said. "Marin." She did not offer a surname. Not with any defiance, it simply didn't seem to occur to her that it would matter to me. "I live here. This is my cottage." She glanced over her shoulder. "Who are you?" I had not been asked that question in a very long time. Not genuinely, not by someone who actually did not know. "Calder," I said. She nodded. "You're from the keep." It was not a question. The keep's bloodline carries a particular stamp. The size, the coloring, the weight of the wolf when it's present. Her father had been pack-blooded. She would know the signs. "Yes," I said. She did not ask me anything else. She went back to her mortar, and the fire shifted, and the cottage settled into the particular quiet of a place where someone has been working alone for a long time. My wolf pressed against my sternum like a hand laid flat. I told myself it was the fever. By the second day, I knew I had underestimated the poison. It was a patience toxin, the kind that retreats when you're conscious and active and advances when you're still. Whoever had ordered the hit had paid for quality. If I'd been alone on that ridge, I would have made it perhaps another 6 hours before the cold spread to my chest. Marin knew it too. She didn't say so directly, but I could read it in the intervals between her treatments. She was working faster than the casual manner suggested. The grinding, the heated compresses, the infusions she changed twice daily. She slept in the chair by the fire in 2-hour stretches and was back at the work table before I woke each time. I watched her more than I slept. My wolf would not let me sleep for long. On the second morning she stepped outside to collect snow for a compress, and while she was gone, I heard the voice from beyond the door. A woman's voice, one of the Valley wives, by the tone, that particular blend of concern and self-satisfaction. "Marin, word's gone up to the keep already. They'll send someone down for him. You should let the pack healers take it from here. It's not right, a wolfless girl tending to a keep man." I heard Marin's answer, clear, unhurried, no heat in it. "He's stable but not movable, 3 more days at least. When the pack healers arrive they're welcome to assess him." A pause. Was there something else? The Valley wife left. Marin came back in and set the compress without comment. She did not look at me to see if I had heard. She simply picked up where she'd left off, her hands sure and even. "Wolfless," I said. She glanced up. "Is that what they call you?" Yes, no self-pity in it, no bitterness either. It was the tone of someone who had been called something so often that it had simply become the landscape. "Your father was pack-blooded." "My mother wasn't. The wolf doesn't always carry." She turned back to the compress. "It doesn't mean anything. I can't shift. I'm not bonded to a pack. I have no claim. That's what it means to the Valley." She smoothed the compress into place with 2 careful fingers. "I've been told it means I don't belong here." "But you stayed." She looked at me then, a different look than the assessing clinical one, slower, as if she were deciding something. "This is my home," she said. "My father built this cottage. I was born in this room." She folded the excess linen over the edge of the pallet. "Being told you don't belong somewhere isn't the same as being asked to leave. I never left." My wolf pushed forward against my ribs, so hard I had to breathe through it. I turned my head toward the wall and told myself again that it was the fever. It was not the fever. I knew it that night, the second night, when I woke at the small hours and found the fire had burned low, and Marin was asleep in the chair, and the room was quiet, and my wolf was not restless the way he always was in unfamiliar places. He was at peace. He had not been at peace in years, perhaps longer. I lay in the dark listening to the low sound of her breathing and the far-off sound of wind off the upper peaks, and I examined that peace the way you'd examine something you found in your palm and didn't recognize. And then I looked at my left hand. The mate mark is not a thing every alpha king carries. It is a thing given, not inherited, and it comes when the bond is ready, not when the king decides. I had heard about it since boyhood. A warmth, the old accounts said. A recognition. Not a blaze, that was the songs. In the quiet reality, it was something closer to a door opening in a room you'd forgotten existed. On the inside of my left wrist, where the skin is thin and the pulse sits close to the surface, there was a mark. New, the edges of it still settling. Not my clan sigil. Not any mark I knew. It was hers. I did not make a sound. I lay in the dark with my left wrist against my chest and looked at the ceiling for a very long time. She stirred in the chair, resettled, and went still again. My wolf lay down inside me with a deliberateness I had never felt in him, not the collapse of exhaustion, but the settling of something that had been searching for a long time and had finally stopped. I understood in that moment what the valley had been calling worthless. I understood what they had been wrong about. On the third morning, my pack arrived. I heard them before I saw them, the sound of horses on the frozen track, the low calls between scouts clearing the approach. My second-in-command, Ran, knocked on the cottage door with more restraint than I expected of him, which told me someone had briefed him about the situation. Marin opened the door. I watched from the pallet. I had pulled myself up to sitting an hour before, over Marin's measured objection and her eventual acceptance that I was going to do it regardless. I was not going to meet my pack lying flat. Ran looked past Marin at me. The relief on his face was brief and professional. "My lord." "Ran." I looked at the men behind him, 6 in keep colors, all of them clocking the cottage, the situation, the woman in the doorway. "Stand down. We're leaving when I say we're leaving, not before." Rand's eyes moved to Marin. I read the assessment in them, efficient, instant, the way a good second reads every variable in a room. I also read the moment it landed wrong. "The healer can be compensated," he started. "Her name," I said, "is Marin." The cottage went quiet. I pulled myself off the pallet. Marin moved to offer her arm before she thought about it and then stopped herself, catching the shift in the room's attention. I took the arm anyway. Her hand was cold from the morning air, and I covered it with mine, and I felt the mark on my wrist pulse once, warm and certain. I walked to the door. The valley elder had come down from the upper track. Word traveled fast in a small valley, and I had no doubt that the sight of the keep's party had drawn everyone within a quarter mile. He stood at the edge of the clearing with 2 of the valley wives, his hands folded, his expression carefully neutral in the way of a man who is rapidly reassessing a position he has held for years. I looked at him. "This woman," I said, "pulled me out of the Veldreth River at dawn 3 days ago. She drew a patience toxin that would have killed me before your valley woke. She worked through 2 nights without rest." I let that sit for a moment. She did this for a stranger, a wolfless girl with no pack claim, no bloodline, no right to be here by your valley's accounting. The elder opened his mouth. "I am not finished," I said. He closed it. "Her name is Maren. She is the daughter of this valley and this valley's land, and she will be addressed as such from this day." I looked past the elder to the wives behind him, the ones who had come to her door with their quiet instructions to step aside. "The accounting was wrong. It has been wrong for some time. I am correcting it." I turned to Maren. She was looking at me with an expression I could not entirely read, not quite surprise, not quite relief. Something more interior than either. The look of a woman hearing something said aloud that she had known quietly for years but had never been able to prove. "I am not done here," I said to her quietly, quiet enough that it was meant only for her. "If you're willing." She looked at me for a long moment. "You still owe me 3 more days of staying still," she said. My wolf laughed. I don't know how else to name it. A ripple of something warm and wholly undignified through my chest. "Then I'll stay," I said. 3 more days became 5. I told myself it was prudent. The poison needed fully clearing. The mountain pass needed scouting before I rode back. The pack needed rest after the search. All of it was true. None of it was the reason. The reason was the way she moved through that cottage in the early morning before she knew I was watching. The reason was the way she talked to the injured animals that found their way to her door. A fox with a broken leg. A pack wolf that had come down from the high ridge with a wound she cleaned without hesitation. The reason was the way she said nothing when I told her, on the 4th night, what the mark on my wrist meant. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I've seen it in books. My father had one." "I know what it means," I said. "I'm asking what you want it to mean." She looked at me steadily, no performance in it. "I want to know you," she said, "not the title you." "That is a harder thing," I said honestly. "I have time," she said. My wolf pressed his head against my ribs like a hound settling in front of a fire. Content. Certain. As if every restless year of searching had simply been the distance between where he started and where she was standing. We rode back to Veldrath Keep on the 6th morning. Maren had packed 1 bag. I had offered a cart. She had declined the cart with the same easy practicality she applied to everything, and she rode behind Ran on the 2nd horse, and she looked at the valley as we passed through it with the expression of someone memorizing something. The valley elder stood at the track's edge as we came through. He bowed. He had sent word the night before, a short, formal message acknowledging the correction. I had read it and set it aside. The words mattered less to me than whether the valley would remember them. I suspected they would. People remember a public accounting better than a private one. Maren didn't look at the elder when we passed. She looked at the river. At the bend where the shallows were, where she had pulled me out in the gray before sunrise, with no audience and no expectation of reward, because a creature was suffering and she was capable of helping. That was the whole of her arithmetic. I had come to understand this over 6 days in her cottage, and I understood it more clearly with every mile between us and the valley. She helped because she could. She stayed because it was her home. She gave without accounting because accounting had never been the point for her. The valley had called this worthlessness. I had a different word for it. The keep's great hall had seen a great many arrivals in my reign. None felt like this one. My council was assembled, word had gone ahead. They knew I was returning, and they had the particular stillness of men who know something significant has shifted, but do not yet know what to do with it. My senior advisor, Brennan, stepped forward as I dismounted. His eyes moved to Maren. "My lord," he began. "My council," I said, "will be introduced to Maren of Veldrath Valley." I looked at Brennan. "She will be given the eastern wing of the keep. She will be treated as a guest of the First Order until she is comfortable with a different title." I kept my voice level. "Is that understood?" Brennan looked at the mark on my wrist. He had been at this keep for 30 years. He had attended my grandfather's bonding ceremony and my father's. He knew the mark for what it was. He bowed. And then the men behind him bowed, and the keep staff in the yard bowed, and the wolves who had gathered at the perimeter of the yard, a dozen of them, drawn by instinct more than instruction, sat down and were still. Maren stood in the middle of all of it and did not flinch. She looked at the wolves for a long moment, then she looked at me. "You said they'd be formal," she said quietly. "I said they would adjust," I said. "They're sitting." "Yes." "The big one at the back is staring at me." "That is my wolf," I said. "He's been staring at you since the river. I apologize, he has no manners." The corner of her mouth moved. "He can come closer," she said, "if he wants." My wolf and I did. That was 3 seasons ago. I do not make speeches about what she has meant to this keep. Actions are a better record. The Eastern healing rooms that were half empty and poorly supplied when she arrived are now the finest in the region. She rebuilt them herself, working alongside the keep's healers with the same unhurried competence she had applied to the poison in my bloodstream. The wolves, my wolves, the pack wolves of Veldrath, circle the keep's courtyard at the hours she works, the way wolves circle what they've chosen to protect. The Valley Elder writes quarterly now. Formal letters, respectful in tone. I read them and passed them to Maren. She writes back with more warmth than he has earned, because warmth is what she defaults to when given the choice. The Valley wives, the ones who came to her door with their certainties about where she belonged, I am told they have found more careful words. I do not track them closely. What they think matters less to me than what Maren says when I ask her whether she wants to go back and visit. "I'd like to see the river in spring," she said the last time I asked. "Then we'll go," I said. "Just the 2 of us, not a procession." "You think I can't manage a ride without an escort?" She gave me the look that means she has a detailed and accurate opinion on that subject, and has chosen, out of kindness, not to deliver it. I love that look. I have loved it since the 2nd day in the cottage, when I was barely coherent, and she was grinding medicine at the work table, and I understood, through the fog of poison and fever, that she was the most competent and the most unglamorous and the most genuinely good person I had ever been in a room with, and that my wolf had known it within 30 seconds of her touching him. The Valley called her worthless. What they meant was, she had nothing to offer them. What they missed was the difference between offering and giving. Maren has never offered anything in her life. She simply gives readily, without keeping score, without requiring an audience. She gave that to a wounded wolf in a freezing river at dawn, not knowing who he was. She gives it to this keep, to these wolves, to me every day. I am a king who has held a mountain kingdom through wars and blighted winters, and a council that cannot agree. I have made hard choices, and I have carried hard years. But the truest thing I have ever done, the thing that required the least decision and the clearest sight, was to walk to the door of a small cottage on a frozen morning, take the arm of a woman who had been told her whole life that she did not belong, and say, "Here is where you belong. She is my Luna." And every dawn the Veldrath River catches the light below the keep's eastern window, and she stands at that window with her hands around a cup, watching the water, and my wolf settles in my chest like the easiest breath I have ever taken. I asked her once, maybe 6 weeks in, what she had been thinking that morning on the riverbank, when she'd found a massive wolf half drowned in the shallows and decided, alone before sunrise, to drag it out. She thought about it for a moment. "I thought you were cold," she said. That is the whole of her, that is everything. She thought he was cold, so she didn't leave him there. The mountain kingdom of Veldrath has had many Luna queens. History will record the lineages and the ceremonies and the formal bonds. What it will not record, and what I carry as the most important knowledge I own, is this: the woman who rules beside me was not found because she was searching for a crown. She was found because she was already quietly doing the work, and she would have kept doing it forever, with or without an audience. My wolf found her at the river. The rest was simply arriving,